You doing today? Hope you're having a good one. This is William Bibbs from Free Power. Welcome you back. And today I got another podcast. I'm going to have to break it up into several parts again because this one's kind of long as well. This one was done around January the 8th as well. But this one's a little bit different because the guy that's actually talking to Steve Fambro is a really big fan of Aptera, and I think y'all are really going to love this. So let's get into it. All right. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back again to my channel. I think y'all gonna love this podcast with Steve Frambo. And he's actually talking about what really got him inspired to do Aptera. So let's listen into this.
I'm your host, Michael Callahan, and wherever you might be now, this is where we go next. And Steve Fambro is co-founder and co-CEO of Aptera Motors, the solar mobility company that delivers the world's most technologically advanced solar electric vehicle, made possible by breakthroughs in battery efficiency, aerodynamics, material science, and manufacturing. Aptera is the first in a series of eco-friendly vehicles that will be offered for consumer and commercial use. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me, Michael.
Well, it really is a pleasure because as someone who was following Aptera all the way back in 2008, as someone who drives an electric vehicle today, in part because of the spark your company lit within me 14 years ago, it really is a pleasure to speak with you. And I think the pitch for Aptera is right there in your introduction. But before we travel back in time to 2006 to the genesis of the company, I'd love to start with two more immediate, timely questions. So the first one is, for listeners who perhaps aren't as familiar with Aptera as, let's say, I might be, and considering this is an audio-only podcast, can you describe what makes the Aptera visually and technologically unique from other EVs on the market today?
What makes Aptera different and unique from other EVs on the market today is that from our rebirth, if you will, we are primarily a solar power company who's focused first on solar mobility. But we see solar power being integral to not only mobility, but so many other needs. And we realized that it couldn't be an afterthought, that instead it needed to be a very large part of the research, development, the intellectual property that we create. To make solar mobility possible, you first really have to be a solar power company. So most people recognize what that means by just seeing Aptera, but they probably don't understand or appreciate just how in deep we are into solar to make that happen.
And we'll get to the start of the company in just one second, because I think this question ties in. Aptera, back in its initial founding, if I remember correctly, wasn't as solar, if at all, solar focused back then as it is today. So obviously solar panels have gotten cheaper, more efficient, more cost effective, more technologically advanced in the 14, 15 years that's transpired. But was there anything else that kind of moved the needle for you to focus so much on solar in this go-round?
Yeah, I would say primarily it's with the availability and affordability of the new Maxion cells. We are able to form those cells, and they're quite flat, and brittle, but we can form them in 3D with our process, whereas we could not with any other cell. So when you saw the first Aptera, you saw basically very flat cells on the roof that would provide some cooling assist, some ventilation, something like that. Nothing really to move the needle. Once we discovered with our process, we could form these cells in sort of 3D, we could bend them in X and Y. We said, why don't we just cover as much of the vehicle as we can in it? The light went on there when we first calculated. Chris and I built a mock-up, a full-scale prototype, and put on his roof of his workshop because we had full view of the sun. And, we did some basic calculations and said, wait a minute, forget the roof. We should put these cells over the whole thing. We could get, 30, 40 miles a day. And that was the genesis of that.
And to our listeners who, again, might not be familiar with Aptera, I highly recommend you go to the website, which is aptera.us, and just look at the vehicle as you're listening to this conversation, because I really think you have to see it to understand the teardrop 3-wheel design. It really is something that is really visually grabbing, and I think you have to really see it to understand what we're talking about. I think starting and running a company, especially one as complex and potentially disruptive as Aptera Motors, is really brutal, often thankless work. The hours are long, the rewards are comparatively few, and those rewards are often spaced really far apart because, production and development is a really time-intensive, long event. And that's if a company even succeeds, right? So why are you here? Why are you doing this rather than literally anything else, considering how hard it is to found and run a company?
I think my personality archetype is that I need almost an existential threat kind of challenge in my life. I don't ever see myself retiring, even if I become, fantastically wealthy or something. It'll just be something else I do, some other project, some other thing that really moves the needle in a big way. When I graduated university, went to work in biotech, it was great because I was challenged well out of my comfort zone, up until the point where we built the last robot that was so efficient it put all the other robots that we made out of business. And I was put on boring work, and I just realized that the paycheck was almost meaningless to me. I needed to be challenged, and it wasn't challenging me. Work wasn't challenging me in the way it was. And so I think that's just what I learned about myself, is that I need to feel that kind of pressure and challenge all the time. I feel anxious without it.
I can understand that. I know people like that in the entertainment industry where I live and work. And I even know folks in Silicon Valley who kind of feel the same way. That feeling of mental and creative atrophy that someone can experience, someone who's really ambitious, wants to be part of those projects that they feel can be really world or life-changing. I've met people like that where literally if they're not expending all of their brain energy, all of their creative energy on something, they feel like they're wasting it. I think that takes us to 2006 pretty well. You were working for Illumina, which was a biotechnology company at the time. And right before you founded Accelerated Composites, which was what Aptera was initially called. My question is back in 2006, you walked through kind of where you were with Illumina. You created a hyper advanced robot that put all the other robots out of business, and you were trying to think of what your next challenge was going to be. So what was the defining moment? In my industry, we'd call it the inciting incident that caused you to take the leap from employee to entrepreneur, right? Why didn't you just go to another company that was doing really ambitious things? What was the burning ember in your chest that you just couldn't put out that made you have to start the company in the first place?
I had started building this as a project without thought of making a company. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I mean, I had, as a kid, I worked on cars and, mowed lawns and did stuff like that. But I wouldn't call myself an entrepreneur. I think those are just sort of industrious things that kids, in the 80s did to get a little pocket change. But for me, being an aviation enthusiast and pilot, I was following Burt Rutan, Scaled Composites, and their work in having the first privately funded and built spacecraft. I was following the Spaceship One quite carefully, and I had studied every video and book about Burt Rutan and his method of composites, and I knew all about his company and all about the different planes, and my wife convinced me not to build a plane, but to build this car instead. That was kind of the nexus. But a friend of mine, we drove out to Mojave to watch one of the launches of Spaceship One with 100,000, a lot of people. It was like a massive, massive event out there. We watched the launch. We brought our little aviation radio so we could listen in on, the communications and hear what was happening. Later, we kind of sweet-talked our way into the VIP event so we could get our picture taken with the spacecraft. And on the drive home from Mojave, I was reflecting on how this team of less than 50 people, they designed and built the aircraft to fly the spaceship up. They designed and built the spaceship. They designed and built a flight simulator for it. And they were able to do so because they were small and they were nimble and they could make decisions quickly. But the tools that were available, the computational fluid dynamics, the finite element analysis, these tools that were so powerful and they could run on a desktop computer versus a mainframe back then, and they just weren't available 5 years earlier at that price. And so I became convinced that if this team of 50 could build a spacecraft from scratch, from ordering, from Aircraft Spruce and Specialty and McMaster-Carr, then, a small company of 20 or so could design and build this vehicle. That was sort of the rationale. And because nobody was doing it, I instantly thought to myself, well, I have to do it because the large companies aren't going to do it. Detroit's not going to do it. Stuttgart's not going to do it. And it can be done because I just watched the spacecraft fly and land successfully with a very small team. So that was kind of the aha moment that it could be done. And the moment I realized it could be done, then I started planning on how I would do it. I didn't know any entrepreneurs, so I had to find some. I connected with people who had friends who were founders or who had exited a company they founded. And I just began talking with everyone and determined, okay, here's the path that we have to do to go raise money. And I just started working on that path. That was the aha moment.
Okay, so you started with a team of 20. One of those 20 people was now co-CEO Chris Anthony, who you brought on as the COO back in 2006. What was and is it about your partnership with Chris that works so well that you've gotten the band back together, so to speak, 16 years after Aptera's initial formation?
Chris and I, we're similar and we're different. We both come from the rural South. He had a lot harder upbringing than I. We both were in the military. So we have a lot of cultural similarities and affinity. We're also very different in terms of how we think about problems and solutions. And I would say there's some overlap from like a Venn diagram, but we're really complementary. We both, having raised money and run companies, we both can shift to different modes, to the extrovert, to the manager, to the visionary. You have to be able to kind of shift between these modes. But he's more comfortable in some of the modes than I am and vice versa. And so there's just different decisions that we divide up amongst ourselves, different areas where we just think that one person is better at reviewing that material and making those decisions. We don't do it in a vacuum. We don't do it without consulting with each other. But I think the short answer is we both think that with both of us, we're just stronger than we are added up individually, really a form of synergy. And I think both of us realized with our other companies, if we had been together when we had formed them as opposed to separate, they might have been a different story. I formed FamGrow by myself. I didn't have the benefit of Chris. Chris formed Flux by himself and didn't have the benefit of me. He did well. Flux is a public company now. But we both kind of feel that maybe we would have had different outcomes, different trajectories if we'd been tag teaming on these different projects.
Yeah, that kind of synergy that can happen when two people really complement each other well, who are equally as ambitious, but kind of fill in pieces that one might be, I don't know if missing is the right word, but I think complement is the right word. And this is going to sound like a ludicrous comparison to some people listening to this, but it's kind of the idea like after the Beatles broke up, McCartney went on to do some really great stuff. Lennon went on to do some really great stuff, but it never sounded like it did when they were working together. So I totally understand that feeling of, you can be successful on your own, but I imagine once you refounded Aptera in 2019, you began to realize, oh, wow, there was really something missing. There was something absent when we were apart that really feels like it's back now that we've started Aptera again.
Yes, I think it was really after maybe spending a couple of years reflecting on what happened with the previous Aptera, that we realized we would be stronger together running an organization than one of us sort of being at the top and one of us being sort of relegated to a lower part of the team. You think about running especially a tech company, it would be different. It would be different if we're a different kind of company, but it's a new product. It's a new technology. It's a new segment. There's so much that's new about it. It requires a very broad depth of skills that I think it would be, impossible for one person to do unless that one person is, some magical person like Elon Musk or something who apparently can, manage all these different companies. I think for us, for us mere mortals, it's far easier to do it with this team of two people than by ourselves. And even something as simple as, tactically, Chris is a night person and I'm an early bird. So I can get up early at 4 or 5. I can do calls overseas. I can do interviews like this while Chris is still getting his beauty sleep, but he'll be up till 1 or 2 in the morning working on things. So completely different styles that complement each other.
Combined, you're basically working a 20-hour workday.
That's right.
What you said just there about the space still being so new and what Aptera's doing being so new and disruptive still to this day, I think it kind of explains the co-CEO moniker, right? Because when I've been telling some folks I know about this interview we're having right now, and I say, oh, I'm interviewing the co-CEO of Aptera Motors, I've gotten a few people who said, like, co-CEO, what does that mean? I've never heard of a co-CEO before. But it sounds like your partnership with Chris is so equal and so intertwined that you really couldn't have any other title if you wanted to.
Yeah, a lot of people ask about it. And, historically, there's not a lot of examples, but there were some civilizations like Spartans who, for their entire existence, always had two kings, and they made it work. They had rules and areas of ownership that they agreed to. And I think that's really key. When people react that way, I think it is very non-standard, right? You expect to only see one. But for us, it's also a way of ensuring that we have a check and balance on each other in a way that you just wouldn't be able to have with a management team. If a management team pushes back on the CEO, typically that might not go well for that manager, or it could be an enlightened kind of CEO who would take that feedback and integrate it. But in our situation, we need to be able to cross-check each other and know when one of us are sort of going, off the rails or trending in the wrong direction. And I think it's really having that trusted relationship where we can give that feedback to each other and keep each other accountable, keep each other on track, and complement each other as well.
Here we see Steve Callahan really loves Aptera, and how can you not love this vehicle? I mean, it is awesome. This vehicle is going to be the bomb, I'm telling you. But we can see that Steve actually got his inspiration from, I think the company was called Virgin Galactic. How that crew got together and they built that airplane with a rocket ship connected to it, and they would fly it up and go up to the stars. So that, I believe, is what Steve Fambro was talking about. And for you young entrepreneurs out there, I mean, if you're inspired by something, go ahead, get your dreams out there, create it. You never know how far it's going to go, just like with what Aptera is doing now. And so I really highly encourage that. Who knows what fantastic idea you may come out with. And we need people, great thinkers, just like Steve and Chris and all the Aptera team and how they're putting everything together. So we're going to look at the accelerator program now, because I know this video is taking a little bit too long, and I only want to make my videos but so long. But on the investment leaderboard here, we see that if it pops up, I always have a problem with this coming up on the first one, but that's okay. I know I'm gonna get in there sooner or later. And I didn't check it yesterday, but oh, great giggly wiggly, look at this. Wow, what a jump. I had a feeling that close to the end of March, this is really going to jump pretty fast. And right now we got 388 investors. It's up to 5.27 million money now. So yeah, this is really jumping fast. And RP is still in the lead. He's at the top. And then GZ is second. JB is third. GT is fourth. And so that lineup pretty much stayed the same. But man, we got a lot of guys hitting hard in here now. Man, there's some big guys coming in. This is awesome. This is really good to see. Love to see that. But like I said, that more than likely over when we get closer to the end of March, this is really going to jump up big time. Those numbers are going to accelerate pretty quick for those volleying to get the number one car. And I don't blame them. I'd rather get the number one car. I wish I could. But you know what? There's also a website or investment site that we've forgotten about, and I want to go back to and check with them too. That's the Republic. Let's look at that one, see how they're doing, because all the investments that are coming in is going to help. And I don't remember the last time I checked on this, but I mean, they got 1,043 investors on here, and they're up to 1,730,000. So you can add that to the list as well. And yes, Aptera is really doing good. I can't wait to see what happens at the end of March when everything really starts clicking. That's going to be some exciting times. Oh boy, I know it's going to be good. But hey, listen, what do you think? You think RG is going to stay on the #1 spot? Give me your thoughts on what you think is going to happen. You think Aptera is going to make it up to 20 mil? What do you think? Give me your comments below. I really want to know what you think. But also, if you're new here, you might want to invest in Aptera. I'm not a financial advisor. And on that webpage I was just on, either one of them, you can invest. If you go to the Republic, you don't have to invest as much. You can invest $210 is the lowest. But I mean, if you're going to invest $10,000 or up, you might as well go ahead and jump on getting the launch edition, so you could go ahead and get it. Or you can look at my link below, and if you just want to get the vehicle, you can use my link, and that will take $30 off. So you just have to put $70 down. All right. If you're new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like, ring the bell, and you'll catch all my videos when they come out. And I will keep you up to date, because I try to put a video out at least every 2 days if I can. Sometimes I'll do it a little bit sooner than that, but you won't miss a video, especially if you subscribe. So you guys, y'all have a good one. You take care. We'll catch you on the next one. All right. Goodbye.